to HELPtalk. We are deep in the throes here of season 2 and always excited to bring you different guests. We've got a tremendous guest here today, but before I introduce Steve, let me introduce, of course, Phil, our co-host here and co-founder of Helpopedia, Phil Vetrano, who's always helping folks figure out, well, what do I do now in high school and what's that path forward? In the house here today, we've got Disability Advocate. He has been associated with all kinds of things, initiatives, Ability Ground. You've got Finding Common Ground, all of these different efforts. So rather than me slaughter them, why don't you tell our audience all the different things that you're up to advocating for change and opportunity and access for those with disabilities?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the barn. My son's an adult with autism. He was diagnosed late in his life. Back then they didn't diagnose autism back then, 35 years ago. So we struggled. I struggled with everything, and mostly with trying to get him stabilized and structured. And anybody that knows anything about autism nowadays knows you have to do some of that stuff to maintain some sense of balance for him. And we were able to fix the school piece. We were able to fix the home piece. But the recreation part of it and the social piece, we couldn't. There really wasn't anywhere for him to go. So many kids, the answer was always send them to the mall, let them walk around and come home. My son liked sports. He liked activities. He liked to do things, liked to hang out with his buddies, and couldn't. His buddies being usually other autistic kids in his program and things like that, because he's an adult. And I convinced my wife to build, which was supposed to be a shed, a 10 by 12 shed. And it wound up being a 2-story building. It's about 40 feet long, and it's 2 stories. It's pretty big. We just kept adding on because we kept getting ideas to put in it for him. And so there's really a lot of cool stuff. If anybody Googles Oneida County Autism Barn, they'll be able to bring it up. The pictures of it inside, it's got a wow factor. I did it intentionally for him, not realizing that anybody else would ever want to use it. But what happened was his friends started coming over and telling other autistic adults and autistic kids. And then a parent, I would imagine a parent, got a hold of somebody at the press. And the next thing I know, there's a Spectrum reporter outside, wanted to do a story on it. So, and then it blew up. We had calls from all over the state. So we knew we were onto something. And the main thing is it works. We've had, Phil knows that I do therapeutic foster care. We've done it for a long time. We usually get the high needs autistic kids, the kids that can't make it another foster home usually because they're autism and they're maybe what we'll call behaviors at the time. And we would get all of them. And one of the coping things that we would do with them was bring them out to our barn, and it worked. And, if a kid might be headbanging inside in a room that's got pretty profound autism, the next thing you know, if I tell him, Michael, you want to go in the barn? He stops immediately and runs out there. And you would think you'd run out there to Xbox because that is out there, but it's the least used thing out there. The thing that's used the most is everything else. It's music equipment. Michael would like to go right to the 8-tracks, take them all out of the case, line them all up. And he picked one out of maybe 50 of them that are laid all over the floor. And he would not watch the movie. He would watch the credits. And he would rewind the credits. But my point being that every single kid that has autism has a different quality that they're looking for, a love that they have. And we have to find it. And I think that every child that's ever come through here, and even with the adults that use the barn, they all go in and they gravitate towards one thing and they like it. And they come back just for that reason. But it's like I said, it's usually not the electronics of the new electronics. They usually don't even go near that stuff. And we have it out there. We have a big TV for it. It's hardly ever used. But it's been a hangout for my son, who gets to bring his buddies over, and it makes him feel special for reasons probably different than he normally does. And because they all come, can you have your dad build me one of these too? All that kind of, and I'm sure he probably feels pretty proud of that. And Like I said, once Spectrum hit the story, it got promoted out there, and it actually got added on because I'll bring it to the next thing, which is the Ability Bus. Um, and I'll back that up a little bit. Because of my advocacy, I got on some boards. I was on the Family Advocacy Board, and we lost our funding because when they shut down MSCs, the Medicaid Service Coordination, our son was left out along with 235 other families. This agency, they took the funding right out from us, and because they wanted to go to the care management style, and we liked it because our son got a lot of attention. I could make a phone call and get somebody on the phone. It's very hard to do any of that stuff, even with the new CCOs. But we liked it, and rather than just close it down, the board that was on there, they all ran for the hills because it was ending. I didn't want to end it because the place had been open 60 years and served a lot of people in our area, and I didn't want to just end it on that note. I want the legacy of the person. It was a single mom who started it. I wanted that to carry on, and I was able to get it to the Veterans Outreach Center in our area, of all places, because I tried to tie into some of the autism centers and tried to tie into some of the people that served the disability community. I couldn't get them to bite on it. The veterans did it, and I got under board. The first idea I pitched them was this bus, and it was because so many of our kids, including my son, and I'll say kids, it's even though he's an adult, whether it's kids or adults with autism, they have transportation problems, and it's hard enough to get transportation during the day. Try getting on a night and weekend for our individuals and loved ones, and it's hard. And so I pitched this bus, and I made it easy for them because I went out and found it first. It was a used 15-passenger bus, and I had done my homework where you don't need a CDL license as long as you don't go over 15 passengers. And what is so cool about all of this is they bought it the next day. And I told Phil the story. Can you imagine if I went to the state and tried to get this through one of the state agencies? It would be 3 years in committee. And probably every single reason you can come up with why we shouldn't do it. They bought it the next day. It's been up for 2 years. It's been a huge success. We don't even use paid drivers. You want to know why? It's easier to find voluntary drivers than it is paid drivers. And you think, why is that? It's just easier to take a retired veteran, a retired police officer, a retired fireman who wants to give back and picks up a couple hours on a weekend to take these kids to a hockey game or a baseball game or to the zoo or whatever. And we have not had any issues of driver problems in 2 years. It's nominal to insure it. And so anyways, the state hears about it. They love the idea. Of course, they like it now because we did all the work. And they didn't have to outlay anything, but they kicked a national film producer to my house, and they came in and filmed, and they loved it. And actually, one of the things I don't even know if it's on the list I showed Phil, it's a new nonprofit starting in Washington, D.C. called worthdoing.org. And what that's going to be is exactly these kinds of things. These kinds of things where we're not going to get involved with the state and federal and try and get their funding. We're going to try and do it through community. We're going to try and do it through a veterans organization, Rotary, Elks, Optimus. That could be a fire department to see if they would pick up these buses. And we're looking to do 2 in every state in 2026, which is extremely aggressive. It was more aggressive than I probably would, and I'm aggressive. They're interested in making this happen, 2 in each state to start. And then hopefully every community will have the bus. And then eventually we're looking in prefab in my barn. So we're looking at some building contractors to put one in all communities everywhere and not costing the communities any money. We're looking and do it again through communities for the prefab barn, so to speak. And then we'll fill it up because I've been very successful in being able to fill it with all the cool stuff. I mean, we have records and 8-tracks and cassettes and things that you just don't see anymore. But that's what interests these kids with autism. And they're so used to the electronics of today that when you throw something like different like that at them, and it's visual and it's it's hard to explain. It just runs differently. They just blows their mind when they see, an 8-track working on an old 8-track player that we have in a barn. And then they'll go over and pick up a a drum, and we probably got 30 or 40 guitars, and we don't care, if they, pound on the guitars and drums all day long out there. And can you imagine if they went to the mall, they wouldn't be able to touch. They wouldn't be able to do any of this.
No.
And
And that's a hard thing.
Yeah. In this barn
concept. So Steve, what do folks do that don't have a dad to build them a barn or to get them a bus to take them places? I hear you've got some tips for us. Can we get into those, please? What do you got? What should we do?
Yeah, look, everything that I do is completely opposite of everybody else. Somebody asked me, how do you get in the door of legislators for 20 minutes? And a month ago, I told Phil I got in for 4 hours. It's these kinds of things that you can't be like everybody else, because everybody's doing the same thing. They go down on the buses, with the signs, they go down to Albany, the capital, or any capital of any state, and they have, the rah-rah things, and all it is a photo op. And if the state was standing right in front of me, and I have a great relationship with all of them, I would tell them the same exact thing. And you know what? Behind the scenes, they tell me, you're 100% right, Steve. We tune you out because you're the 300th group that came in today. And so you can't do it the same way. So if you want to make change, you've got to do it differently. And look, I'm sorry. Hang on. I hope you can edit that out. I forgot to put it off.
We're live. We're live.
Hey, I like real. I like genuine and real. So that can stay right. That'll be a part of the blooper part of it. But yeah, look, there's a lot of different tips I can do. I would just say that if you're a single mom and you're frustrated with everything that's going on in your child's life because they have autism, the best thing to do is probably, of course, you can go to the provider agency. You can go to the state agency. In New York, it's OPWDD or OCFS or the Office of Mental Health. Any of the state agencies, you can go to them. My guess is that more than likely you're going to get a no or a roadblock. And so my suggestion is to personalize it to yourself and your child, and don't go down all those roads, because you're going to waste a lot of time. You can do all that stuff later on. You can do it in addition to what you're doing, but you have to find a solution to your child's issue. So if it's happens to be respite, and respite's very hard to get, you've got to find somebody in your area that's getting respite already. You got to find a parent that's out there advocating for respite. There's parents out there like me. My wife's hoping they didn't clone me into more, but Steves. But there's more Steves out there willing to roll up their sleeves and help others besides my own son. I'd find a similar parent to that and try and find a solution to your kid's issue of respite, or their issue with bus, or their issue with maybe with the school piece. We have seen every single problem that you can possibly imagine over the years. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned this at one of the meetings I had with Phil recently. It's interesting that we have all these agencies, and just in my area, there's 143 nonprofits in my area in Oneida County. That's a lot of nonprofits. And you go to all these nonprofits and you still can't get an answer. And then you go to the state and you still don't get an answer. And then you go to, all the way up to maybe regional and national agencies that deal with autism and disabilities, and you still don't get an answer. What is the parent supposed to do? You know what happens? They get frustrated, and then they stop doing any kind of advocacy. And I'd rather them try and find another parent who is willing to take on the fight for them, and either band together or tell them, like, I'm willing to get their stories. And it's interesting that they call me after they call all these other places. It's not because I'm a superstar or a rock star or any of that way, shape, or manner. They call me because they're looking for help still, and they're not getting the answers. And so it's always to try and find the answer for your individual situation, because there's a housing crisis. There's a busing crisis, transportation crisis. Yes. So there's a commonality of all of that. But I think if you bring it down to your local level and start there, and individualize and find a solution locally for your own issue. And don't waste all your time on all that other stuff in the beginning, because you're going to exhaust yourself. If you're a single mom, you're going to really exhaust yourself. And so many of them have given up. And I think that's why our podcast has struck a chord with so many moms and dads and families out there, is because we're trying to provide answers and some tips and get these providers in the room to answer questions, and get these state agencies in the room. And our New York State OPWDD commissioner is coming on our podcast December 8th. And it's almost unheard of for them to do that. They'll do their podcast or state podcasts. Very seldom do they go into the private world, because they don't want to answer the question. And if Willow Bear was, right here, I'd say the same things. She knows I would say the same exact thing. They just, unfortunately, the bureaucracy and red tape hand ties them a lot, and they can't answer the questions, so they don't. It's just easier not to. So if you go to one of their focus groups, I could give you a parent, like a single mom, go to one of their OPWDD focus groups. They have them all over the state, a couple times a year. Go to one. You'll get 3 minutes of your time, but they won't answer any questions. So how are you going to get that? How are you going to get an answer to your issue? So that's not the answer. And going off of that, because I know that doesn't work, I wanted to add one more thing. When this new commissioner came in this past year, all they'd ever had was focus groups. You could join a family stakeholders group, developmental disability. I can't remember. There's an autism board. There's different groups, but you got to be appointed usually by the governor or somebody like that to get on them. And they usually hand pack them with providers. Unfortunately, not enough families. I pitched her a letter, and I knew she would read it, because I had a pretty good relationship with her coming in to this new job before she got confirmed. I knew she would pitch, I could pitch this to her and she'd read it. I didn't think she'd accept it, and she did. She accepted it. And what it was a listening tour for her to get out of the ivory towers, so to speak, of Albany, and come to Utica and talk to a few families with no providers in the room, no legislators in the room, no media in the room. And you know what happened? It was completely different than anything that she'd ever been exposed to, or any previous commissioners all the way back 50 years. And it's because they don't hear the stories from that level, they screen from it. And the providers aren't, to be honest with you, are probably not going to answer the questions or the answers. Everybody's got their own agenda, their own take. Everybody's trying to do well, but they all have their own agendas and they all have their own takes. And I just think it's best. And if you really want to get somebody's attention, you get their attention, and that could be your local legislator. You can do what I did with, contact somebody at the higher level and just do something differently. Try and get them to come here. And she came here. And what was the most important thing that she allowed me to do when she did that was allowed me to pick the families. So I was able to pick 8 families in our area. And I specifically made sure that they were all different topics, because they didn't want 8 topics on housing, 8 topics on that, because I wanted her to see that the issues were broad and mighty, and we had to find a way to get their voices out there. And there was a lot of teary-eyed people in that room when that process was going on, and she took her commissioner's hat off and listened. And more importantly, these 8 families, for the first time, and they told us afterwards, and they even the commissioner followed up with them, they had a chance to give their voices out there and speak. And they never had that opportunity because they were afraid to go to Syracuse. Because it's not like they come to Utica for the focus group. You have to go to Syracuse or Albany. I think Rochester and New York City. And I think there's only 4 or 5 places they go. So anybody in the middle of the state or rural, you're not getting any representation at all, even in the focus group.
And everyone wants to be seen and heard, right? This is the essence of life, whether you're part of the general population or the special needs population. People don't feel seen and heard, and then they get discouraged, and then they try to take matters into their own hands or give up, right? Yeah. And it's just, so it's wonderful that you're exposing people. And I want to highlight to folks, your podcast, I believe, is called Finding Common Ground. That's one you're referring to?
Yes. And we also have a website now, fcgadvocacy.org. It's got a little bit more info. It's got all the episodes on it. It's a lot easier to navigate. And there's also upcoming things that we're working on, projects that we're working on, if somebody wanted to check at it. And more importantly, I'm a fellow parent. And my co-host is a fellow parent of 4 high needs children also with disabilities. And the people that we usually bring in are usually parents or very into trying to help our community. And so there's a lot of valuable information, and not just that, but they're going to see people out there who really truly care and that were willing to answer their questions. So my wife will tell you, I talk a lot. I'm a good listener, but I also talk a lot. My wife, I put her to sleep half the time. So I can't even have a conversation with my wife because she's out. So if somebody calls here and it happened here recently, 10:30 at night because they're in crisis, I try to help them right then. And you're not going to get that at a provider agency. You're lucky to get somebody to answer the phone during the day, let alone somebody answer the phone at night. And more importantly, with probably some kind of an answer for them, because we've had 178 kids come through our house in foster care, and that is a lot of experience over the years of doing that and almost all of them autistic. And
through your house, Steve. Through your house,
in my house.
Yeah. Foster parent.
Yeah.
I hope there's a movie producer who's listening, because this is like the barn of dreams. And you also have the Patch Adams component here, where you're bringing in all these folks to help and support them. I'm telling you, movie producers and script writers, you've got to connect with Steve. This is the next warm, fuzzy movie that's going to come out. And it'd be great to see who's going to play Steve as the leading
Steve
actor.
can play himself. He's multidimensional. He can act too.
There's no better actor than Steve to play Steve.
My wife would probably want Matthew McConaughey, but
well, okay, you know, I can understand why. Yeah, there's some good qualities there. Yeah.
Look, I've never done any of this for the publicity. I don't even like. A lot of times, I try to stay in the back and behind the scenes. I get a lot more accomplished behind the scenes. I don't wind up not wasting any time because I'm behind the scenes in a lot of these things. Unfortunately, in order to move the needle, I've had to kind of come more out in the front. And then when this national film company decides to partner with me to do some of these initiatives, I have to stay involved because I want to make sure it gets done. And that's why I got on the Veterans Board. Is I knew they would have a hard time saying no to me because I proved to them the need. I proved to them that there was a really good cost. It was cost effective. The PR they were going to get would go all the way to the state level, which it did. And now they're going to get even more publicity because this initiative that started with our local veterans is now going nationwide.
So it's amazing, Steve. Now this journey, and certainly for those folks who are interested in advocacy and opening up those doors to legislators and utilizing the strategies that you have done, is certainly opens up their minds to consider it and or connect with people like you to provide those strategies that were successful for you and help them build this connection and opportunities for them to improve the situations that they are in. And it's great to know that you're the guy who's getting phone calls at 10:30 to support families. And if they're, we have a nationwide audience here. So if they're in Arizona, the tip that Steve provided was to connect with local folks who are facing the same situation you are. There's folks who are doing this for longer and also having an impact as well. Joining forces is definitely the way to go. And this is something and with the use of social media, you have opportunities left and right to find folks in the same situation, looking for help and also wanting to provide support and help. And Steve, do you have any other tips for families who
Yeah.
are not in the legislation world, who are just trying to
Yes.
get by?
Look, you know how I learned all this? Being a parent first and trying to find a solution for my own kid. That's my point. They have to do that first. And then start planting, I call it planting seeds. Go plant seeds everywhere. You go meet a legislator, even if you're not talking about your son's issue, go meet him out in the community. They're all local, especially, they're back in session now, but they were off for a long time. And I got, like I said, I got a 4-hour session with our assemblyman. It's unheard of. But I planted the seeds a long time ago. In the same way with our senators, the same way with others in the community. Some of the initiatives that we did, we're working on a complex care rec center and some housing. We got the family court judge to go into the building. We got the sheriff's department to tie in. They're all involved. And even if it's just planting seeds from them, getting to know them, finding a way to see if they can get involved. And you know what happens? They do want to get involved. Disregard the craziness that's going on in the world with all that stuff, because what I have found from both sides of the aisle, and I stay out of the political weeds, is that they all care enough to want to help. And if you keep it local, you're going to have so much more success. So don't shut anybody out because of their political party. Don't shut anybody out because you say, geez, I don't know if the United County Sheriff's Department is even going to listen. Yes, they did. You should see what they're doing in our area. They have a yellow dot program for autism. They're putting symposiums on and sponsoring it. They've got a new one with an awareness event they're going to be running every year, sponsored by the Sheriff's Department. That's where the single moms can go and learn from every provider you can possibly imagine that provides services to their autistic kid from birth to to the will, needing a will. And we had a recent one there in I think it was in October, beginning of October, and we had everybody you can possibly imagine. Probably had 20 vendors. And I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen end of life providers there, but you know what? They got a lot of people interested in it because a lot of people, elderly people, are taking care of elderly autistic children, and they wanted to talk to them and find out some of these answers that they're searching for. That they might be able to go online and maybe find it, but it's so much better to be able to go to something like that in your area, excuse me, and talk to a fellow parent. Talk to somebody who maybe planted seeds, or go plant the seeds yourself, and you'll find out that those things come back. And they've come back and helped me so many times because, Phil, a long time ago, I sat in some legislator's office because when I couldn't get answers, I said, you know what? I'm going to start my own 501c3 nonprofit, and I'm going to fix this stuff. And I'll never forget what she said. One of the assembly people said to me, there's 143 nonprofits in our area, Steve. Don't be 144. And and I don't want to be contradicted because we're going to do one on a Washington, D.C. national scale. But locally, I'm not going to start a 501c3 because we don't need them. We already have 143. What I'm doing is tying into like our big autism agency around here is Calberman. And I'm tying into everything they can possibly do. And then I go help if families want to learn something about autism. I tell them, go to the event. You don't have to ride a bike for the pedal for autism. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Just go be a cheerleader. They all table there. They all have tables. Go talk to these people, and you're going to find out answers that you might not have, and avenues, and save yourself some time, which is so much of this. Like we all lack, a lot of time to do.
Yeah. And with that segue, we're at the bottom of our time slot here for our podcast. But I think your message, a couple of really key messages that have come through. One, you don't have to boil the ocean, right? Like we all know, anybody who's ever been to bed with a mosquito knows how effective they can be, right? So you don't need to have this monster impact. Think locally and team up with other people like yourself who have the same issues or needs or challenges or passion, right? To try to drive change. People like yourself who are amazing change makers and just exemplary. And I really think that's the key message. So Steve, as we wrap up here, where can folks find you? Where should they look? You already told us FCG, so Finding Common Ground, advocacy.org. Where else can people find you?
Look, I'm on Facebook. They can check my name. I'm real. I don't have a fake Facebook name or anything like that. Everything's real. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me Finding Common Ground. Any of the social media, whether it's YouTube, any of them, Finding Common Ground is on all those platforms. The FCGadvocacy.org is the new website. We're trying to keep that updated. The worthdoing.org is in the putting a board together situation. We've already done all the legal part of it. And
Okay.
we actually have 6 or 7 states already interested in that bus. So it tells you that we're going to be able to reach out to other states that listen to your podcast here and possibly help them to get some of these initiatives in their area. So they can find me. And like I said, I take phone calls at house at 10:30.
Perfect. So we'll direct folks Finding Common Ground. You can find Steve Gonyea all over the place on all social media. So with that, Steve, thank you so much for all that you do for the community at large, not just the folks with autism, but all of the rest of the folks in the community to make it just richer and healthier and more inclusive for everyone, and everyone benefits from that.
Yeah, a lot of our folks, they get more out of this than I do. And with a lot of this stuff, because they get the solutions that they're looking for. The parents get the solutions. But I don't want anybody to think that I don't get anything out of this either, because I do. When these kids come back and tell me they found a solution to something maybe that I might have told them to go plant a seed somewhere, that is so inspiring to me, to hear that some mom, said, you know what, I'm going to make a phone call. I'm going to do this. I'm going to find a way. And it's very rewarding. And I could tell you, have a whole other show about that, because there's some parents that are out there that have had success doing some of this and are rock stars now. They're going and planting seeds in their own area. So that's cool.
Excellent. We'll have another Help Talk in the future, Steve, I'm sure. And we could hear those great stories, which are valuable lessons for our audience members. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you for all you guys do. Thank you.
No, it's for what you do. We're trying to enable people like you. And tonight, Helpopedia is having its 3rd annual general meeting. So folks are welcome to that. You can see details on our website. Thank you, Steve. Bye, Phil.
Have a